Hey everyone, it's Christopher and Gena from writingmomentum.com, where we help put writers on the fast track to success. And we had a question come in from Twitter this week that we wanted to answer. This is from Secret Send. She says, at Writing Momentum, hi, what are your top tips on writing an article for the first time? Then she left some hashtags: topical, education, writing article, and dyslexic. So what do we have? What are some top tips for writing articles, Gena?
We came up with 5. Well, actually, no, we came up with 7.
No, pretty quickly too.
Pretty quickly. And we boiled them down to what we would say to a first-time article writer, someone who's writing their first article. And first of all, just congratulations, Secret Send. That is an incredible accomplishment. Whether you are pitching this article still or whether you have already received the assignment, just congratulations. Getting the work done is the biggest battle. So, but if you ask me, the first thing that I would tell a new writer who's writing their first article is I would say get samples of the publication that you want to write for. If you're writing for a website, then go on that website and really look at it. Look at what the style, what the tone of the articles are, what the styles. If you're writing for a specific feature that they run each month or each quarter or however the publication does it, look at how it is structured. You know, you will find sometimes that if you're writing a feature, then perhaps the editor is looking for a certain type of lead, or look at how many sources they're using. And now a lot of publications will go ahead and give you that information. They'll say, you know, I want you to have at least 3 sources for this. But look at how they do it. Look at how it's worked in. Really look at the structure, look at the length, and that will give you a lot of information about what that editor is looking for. And just a quick story for me, I once wrote for a magazine, and I realized after about my second article that they took every article that I did and they turned them into how-to articles. So it didn't matter if it was a feature or whatever. They wanted, I discovered very quickly that they wanted points, 1 to 10. They wanted kind of a top 10 tips for this or top 10 keys for this. And so that just gave me a clue. Now, I was a little late to the game figuring it out, but it helped me in the future, and I ended up having a pretty good relationship with that publication for quite a while. So look at what they've already got, because what they've published, that's what they're looking for and that's what they want.
It's kind of the target for that magazine, but that doesn't mean you can't have, still your own style that's going to show up in your article, because you're writing your article, so your style is still going to come out.
Absolutely.
But you do want to see what they're looking for, because that'll give you more success in being published.
And it'll endear you to that editor, because they will know that when they get your article that they don't have to do a lot of rewrites or they don't have to do a lot of edits. You want to make it as easy as possible for your editor.
Make it as easy as possible. The other thing you want is give them a strong title to the article. So you want to have a title that grabs readers and gets them reading, because that's a lot of the challenge sometimes. You're really, even in a magazine, you're competing, or especially on a blog, you're competing for against other blog entries and against other articles. So you want to have a strong title that makes people want to read that article, as well as you want to have a strong lead. So your lead is like your opening sentence or your opening paragraph to your article. You want to have something that really compels them to read what you've written. And so you might start with a story, or you might start with a quote, or you can start with a question. Sometimes questions are considered not the strongest way to start an article, although you see it a lot of time on the internet, because it really does draw people in. So yeah, just kind of see what the publication does, and if they're okay with that, then I think it's okay. But otherwise, look for other ways, and maybe try a few different ones. Sometimes you'll find it's good to go back and write your lead after you've written the whole article, because you'll kind of feel the flow of that article, and you want to change your lead later. So what else?
Oh, well, sources. Now, I talked a little bit about sources before, but let me just encourage you to have multiple sources in your magazine or your magazine article, at least 2 or 3 or more. I would even go for 3 or more. I like to use, when I'm looking for sources, I will use websites, but make sure that they are credible. So you don't want to go to someone's blog. unless that person is
An authority. Yeah.
on that topic. So I like to use education websites, university websites. I like to use government websites, and you can a lot of times see that by the whether it says it's .edu instead of .com. Government sites. I will also, one way I will use is, and this works for, I would never use Wikipedia, but what you can do, or blogs, like we said, unless it's an authority, but what you can do is a lot of times someone will cite something on a blog or on Wikipedia, and you can go to the original source, and that will get you to the credible authority. Now on Wikipedia, it's all the way at the bottom. So you had mentioned you had a hashtag here called dyslexic. You will find dyslexic, dyslexia, that kind of thing. You will find it if that's your topic. You will find it. You could probably find it in Wikipedia. You can find it in government. You can find it in education. If you go to Wikipedia, go all the way to the bottom. Or if you're reading and it says something interesting there, maybe it talks about a study, a lot of times it will have a footnote. You can go down to the footnote and get to the original source. I do like to use studies, especially if you're working with something scientific that will have kind of somehow you can get a study in there that just adds credibility, it adds interest, and it's just a great source. So look for ways that you can get those really good sources in your magazine article, and so that's
well. And when you say 2 to 3 sources, or even 3 or 4 sources, you're talking about a feature-length article. Now, if you're writing an article like for a blog and they say, hey, we want 400 or 600 words, probably one source is enough.
That's true.
Right? So it depends on how long the article is. So again, go look at the publication, see what others have done, and use that as a way to guide you. And speaking of we talked about leads. I was just thinking, because I just talked about leads a moment ago. You also want to talk about the conclusion, which is the end of the article, the way you end it. You want to have a takeaway. What can people do with this knowledge that you've now shared? Magazines are really looking for this nowadays, because they want to have an actionable item that you can take away from that article and something that you can go do. So just think about that as you're writing the article, and that's usually an easy way to find a way to wrap the article up.
And okay, here's just a real always do this. Every writer needs an editor, but I like to have an editor before I get it to the main editor, and that is to have somebody read your paper or read your article. Even if it is a loved one, a family member, a friend, have them read it. Have them read it to help you catch any typos, to help you make sure that you're making your connections in the article, that your transitions are working, and that they're following what you're saying, that they understand. If there's a sentence in there that they say, I don't understand this sentence, go back and look at it, clarify it. So that's a big thing too. And we also go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, you know what I like to do is I like to let my article sit overnight. So after I've written an article, as long as it's not due like that evening, hopefully you've planned ahead enough that you can have a couple days leeway there. I don't like to send it in that same day after I've written it, even after I've edited it and all that. I like to let it sit overnight, because there's something about waking up in the morning after you've written and all that to go back and look at the article, and I can't tell you how many times you'll find that you've completely left a word out of the sentence, or you thought, oh, I need to expand this thought, or it's something that doesn't quite make sense that I thought it did. So you do want to let it sit overnight. And speaking of which, you also just want to watch your formatting. Make sure that you're using a lot of the standards. Use Times New Roman, have it be 12-point type. Have 1-inch margins, you want to have real good consistency. We have a cat here who's come to join the party. We're out on a farm today in Florida. So you just want to make sure that your document has consistency to it. Because here's a little secret I learned early on, is that when people are editing your written work, they're still visual. So they are going to be thinking about how this is going to look when it's printed. So I like to make my written document as clean and orderly as possible, and I like to make my titles a little larger and my subtitles a little bolder so that it kind of looks like it might when it's laid out. That doesn't mean I do all the formatting and all that, don't get me wrong, but I just make it look nice and ready to see. So
you just want to, that's one of the keys with that, is you don't want it to do anything when you're turning in any magazine article or really any written piece that would pull your editor out. So that's where you catch those typos, that's where you catch those formatting. You want it all to be clean so that there's nothing that draws them out of that, out of what you're trying to say, and it becomes this barrier that they have to overcome in order to see this in print or to see it, to accept it. So, and okay, my last one, and this seems so simple, but you would be so surprised, is just make your due date. Editors want writers who make their due date. You want to make an editor's life easy. And so if they have to do that extra step of checking up with you or worrying about whether or not they're going to have to fill that space because you're not going to make it because you're a day or two late, that is that barrier that you're having to overcome. And the next time they have something that they need written, they're not going to be thinking about you. They're going to be thinking about that writer that can get it in on time. So due dates are huge, and you would be amazed at how many people just don't make their due dates. So make that due date. It's the easiest thing, but it is one of those things that people think they're suggestions. They're not. Make it easy for your editor. Get that work in on time.
So that's our 7 items, and you know what? I have a bonus. You just made me think of this. Okay, when you're writing, in order to make things easier for your editor, I like to add bonuses for the editor. So these are things that they're not necessarily paying me for or that they didn't ask for, but I give to them as options to be able to use. And it's kind of like just going the extra mile. And I found that many editors really appreciate it. So here's what I'll do. At the end of my article, I will leave a few spaces and then I'll put possible pull quotes. And then I'll find some quotes from the article that would be nice to be pulled out when the artist is laying it out, and I might put some pull quotes there. Sometimes I've even gone as far as to write a sidebar. You know how you've read articles and they got the little sidebars, which is kind of like something kind of related to the article. So like if the article is about Japanese cuisine, the sidebar might be a little culinary fact about Japan. Okay, so you would want to have a little sidebar, and I'll write a little 50, 75 word sidebar just that they can use if they want. And if they don't want, no big deal, but I've found that editors really appreciate when they have a little more material to work with. It's better to have too much than too little.
Yes.
So I like to do that as a bonus. Yeah.
And I even have editors who will say, I want a feature article plus 1 sidebar. Well, when I go ahead and turn it in, I'll turn it in with 2 and 3 sidebars. It could be a quote, an interesting quote from one of the people. It could be a fact. It can be 3 tips to take it a little bit further. Any little thing. And sometimes the sidebars end up coming out of the article just because it's information that was really interesting. Maybe you came across it, it was so interesting, but it somehow just didn't fit in the final piece. Well, go ahead and make it a sidebar, throw it out there, and obviously I said throw it out there, do a good job with it, but it doesn't have to be long, it doesn't have to be complicated, but I think it's just really helpful, and it's just really helpful to the editor, it's helpful to the designer, and helps them put it together. And again, you make their job easier, you're more likely to get that second call or that second email getting an offer. So
that's it. Thank you, Secret Sent, for sending in that question. We look forward to hearing how it goes with your article. And
let us know. We want to cheer for you. We are right there with you. Just excited for that you got this opportunity, that you got it in.
Yes, and we're all in this together. So tell you what, if any of you have any questions you want to ask, choose your favorite social channel. Find us on there. We're on almost all of them now. We've tried to make ourselves available on all of them. Throw a comment out there, ask us a question. If you have a comment about this article, feel free to comment. We'd love to hear it. And subscribe to our channels, and we'll just keep the dialogue going. Thank you for joining us.
Bye-bye.